One, two, three. Hi, this is The Greatest Story Ever Played. I'm Dan, and I'm joined by Jacob from Left Behind Game Club.
Hello! I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, really great to have you back again. This is our third time talking about a Dark Pictures game. This time, we're talking about the newest installment called House of Ashes. Before we do that, though, I wanted to pass it over to Jacob to tell you about Left Behind Game Club, things of that sort.
Yeah, I do too many things on the internet. That is the thing that I do. You can find me on Twitter at Jacob McCourt, JACOBMCCOURT. I host 3 shows. The Left Behind Game Club, which Dan mentioned, is a video game book club podcast, which is similar to this show. So if you enjoy this format, I would consider finding a show that Dan has been on. Which, Dan, remind me which episode we ended up doing for Left Behind Game Club.
Firewatch.
I can't remember. Firewatch, yes. Grab the Firewatch episode and then listen to that. And then I host another show with Katie Lesbronson and Travis Coldnut, who have both been on this show. It's called Cutscenes. It's a video game book club podcast. And then Dan is actually going to be on the show in season 3. That's your hot exclusive. So look for that. And then I every once in a while host a show called Video Game Trivia on Twitch Live. It is on hiatus right now, but you can find those VODs on my YouTube channel, Jacob McCourt. Again, thank you for having me on the show. Let's talk about a Dark Pictures game.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, go check Jacob's stuff out. It's great. I've enjoyed all of those things he's mentioned. Also, something I've enjoyed is if we've covered a game, Left Behind Game Club potentially has covered it as well. And it's fun hearing other people's perspectives on those. So definitely encourage you running down that trail if you want to hear different perspectives on games. But yes, Dark Pictures, as you said. Would you want to grab that description for us?
Yeah, I would love to. The Dark Pictures Anthology is a series of standalone, cinematic, branching horror games where the decisions you make in the game determine the story and the outcome you receive. House of Ashes is the 3rd game in the series. In House of Ashes, at the close of the Iraq War, special forces hunting for weapons of mass destruction unearthed something far deadlier, a buried Sumerian temple containing a nest of unearthly creatures. To survive the night below, they must forge a brotherhood with their enemies from the world above.
Awesome. No, thanks for grabbing that. And so production info for this game is it's developed by Supermassive Games, primarily known for Until Dawn, the other Dark Pictures games, of course, and Hidden Agenda. So really, if you like scary games that are choice-based and have that sort of thing, this is your wheelhouse. This is your kind of game. Before we get into any real spoilers, we did want to do a quick kind of non-spoiler section to maybe give you an idea if this is a game you'd want to play or not. So we each, I think, have a couple thoughts on this. The first one I wanted to bring up that I thought was interesting to see is they added difficulty settings to the game, which they hadn't done yet before. So you've got Forgiving, which I think largely makes QTEs easier, I think is the big thing. And yep. I think you can die, but I think it's a bit harder. And then you have Challenging, that's sort of your normal mode. I think that would be kind of what the previous games have been just kind of set at. And then lastly, you have a lethal mode, which your characters will probably die when you play kind of thing. So I thought that was cool as an introduction to throw that in for people. I played it challenging because I figured I'd just play it the way I played the previous games. And I don't have attachment to these characters yet, so I wasn't as worried about losing them. When I played, I grew attached, so I didn't want to lose them as much. But I think challenging was what I went with. What about you?
Yeah, same, challenging. I didn't really even think about it. I couldn't even remember that there were difficulty settings or weren't difficulty settings in the other games. So yeah, I just went with the default, which was challenging.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it struck me as odd. I was like, did I choose this before? So then I looked it up and it said it was the first time. So kind of cool to see that. And I've seen people online say that they were like, oh, I'm not very good at these games, so I did Forgiving, or I really wanted to have stuff get wild, so I did Lethal, or that. So it seems like it lends itself even to like multiple player types or multiple play styles, or if you want different experiences, stuff like that. So I thought that was cool. Another thought I had is the settings and the character here worked a lot better for me than I thought it would. Last time, at the end of Little Hope, we got that little preview of Ashley Tisdale, Iraq, soldiers, that kind of thing. And I was like, all right, is that going to really work out? Like, how's this a horror game? I'm not sure. But that all worked out way better than I thought it would. So If that for some reason turned other people off, I wouldn't let you. I think they really landed that, actually.
I would say I landed kind of in the same place as you when it was first announced. Like, I understood like the other two games and said like, cool, this first one is about like spooky ghosts. The second one is more about like we find out slight spoilers, that there's maybe a time mechanic in the second one, and it revolves around like witchcraft. And so I was like, what are we doing in like Iraq? With Ashley Tisdale from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and High School Musical, which I adore both of those properties, but I was very much like, what are we doing here? But I would say that it worked more than I thought it would.
Nice. No, that's awesome. That's cool. My kind of last non-spoiler thought is I think this is the best Dark Pictures game so far. I think that they did a really good job here, and we'll get into why and stuff later. But I also think this probably gave them a lot more opportunities for the Dark Pictures series. I know that when we started covering these, when Little Hope got announced, they said they wanted to do 8 games, and they wanted to do one every 6 months. They had this kind of big ambitious plan. We're going to hit up a different horror trope each time. And on that first time we talked, I think we were like, 8 games, that's like really bold. Like, I hope they can do it, but 8's a lot. And then the 2 previous that have come out have been decent. If I'm remembering right, we liked Little Hope a little more than Man of Medan.
I think so, yeah. I think I didn't love Man of Medan, but I'm like, hey, this makes sense, and I want to see what happens after. And I liked the second game, Little Hope. And not to give you my like thoughts about this one, but I really like this one. I have thoughts about which one I like more, but I really like this game.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, that's great. I think that's how I feel. It seems like the things they were building or working towards, or just figuring it out, they got to do that a little more in the 2 games before this, and it seems like some of those things kind of connected or came together more this time. So I'm excited for the future of Dark Pictures, I think, after this. So I thought that was pretty cool. But those are my non-spoiler thoughts. I don't know if you had other things you wanted to bring up before we kind of dig in more.
Yeah, I really like, you mentioned how each of the games has their own like horror lane, if you will, where, the first game was more about ghosts, and the second game was more about like witchcraft, I guess. And then the third game is, I don't want to say it, but it's about something else that we'll talk about in a few minutes. I thought the design. Oh, am I going to say this here? Let me talk about my other points first, and then I'll maybe say, hey, this is where I'm going to maybe start spoiling things.
Perfect.
This felt super quick. I blew through this game in like 2 small sittings, and then I sat and played for maybe 4 hours last night and finished the whole thing. And it moved super quick. And I think it was because structurally or pacing wise, this game was very different than the other 2. And there's a specific reason for that. For me, Man of Medan, I didn't really like, but I like both House of Ashes and Little Hope, and I could make a case for both as being my favorite. I'm going to do a very slight spoiler right now before we like give you all the spoilers. I thought the monster design in this game was really great. Like, I really appreciated it, and I watched the documentary that's included on the disc afterwards, and they went into like some of the thoughts that they had, or some of the considerations they made when designing the monster from like a mocap perspective. They at first were going to have the mocap actors be on stilts, but then decided against it. And then also even some of the sounds that went into like the Foley for these creatures, they used like fishing line and a sound of a taser tasing meat to be able to like create the sounds that the monsters had. So I really love people who go crazy and like get super into like why their monster is designed in a certain way. And I felt like one of the strongest pieces of this game is the design of we're going to get into it, but the monsters in this game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's awesome. I didn't check that bonus feature out, so that's cool. I'd love to hear more about that. That's really cool.
Yeah, for my Canadians out there, there is an interview with Ashley Tisdale on the disc as well, and in Canada, our biggest movie chain across the country had this host who did interviews that would play before the movies. His name was Tanner Zipchen, and for the couple Canadians that maybe are listening to this and know who Tanner is from Cineplex, he interviews Ashley Tisdale, and it's great. So shout out to all my Canadians.
Oh, cool.
Shout out to Tanner Zipchen. It's a cool little interview to walk through her process, and she's not really used to doing a lot of like VO or motion capture. She does a lot of like VO for cartoon, and then she does like television, but she'd never done a game before. So she walked through the process of like, here's how it's different for me. I don't actually sit with a script and decide how I'm going to like play a scene, because I have to play the scene 5 different ways depending on the branching path, right? So cool to get in like the actor's mind there.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It does seem like the Dark Pictures have been Canadian heavy. If I'm remembering right, when we did Man of Medan, most of the characters were Canadians, I think. I Canadian actors.
I think you're right. You have a good memory.
That's like ringing in my head. If I feel like I remember we talked about that, because you're like, they're Canadian, they're Canadian, they're Canadian. And I was like, that's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, and I don't know how many Canadians acted, but the host of that specific interview is like a Canadian icon. I don't even think there's an equivalent. Like, does AMC have like a pre-show host that everybody knows? Because we had one of those for 5 or 6 years.
No, that's awesome. I don't think we have something like that really. Yeah. At our movie theaters. That's cool. That's really cool. I like that a lot. But yeah, I guess as Jacob said, I think that's a good intro to kind of head into some spoilers and go through kind of a recap what our experience was like playing and our thoughts on it along the way. Before digging into the recap, though, I think establishing our characters is important. As in this game, like the previous ones, there are 5 characters you play as, and you kind of bounce between them. Unless they die, then their story ends. But like, that's kind of what you got. So first up, you've got Rachel King, played by Ashley Tisdale. She's a CIA agent. She's estranged from her husband, a guy named Eric. We'll meet in a second, and also has an affair going with Nick, who's a soldier. We'll meet in a minute as well. And her kind of demeanor is, I think the soldiers called her like the queen bitch or something like that. So she's just assertive and direct, and I think probably being a CIA agent, kind of leading task force of soldiers, you probably have to be that direct to be able to get what you need done. So it kind of makes sense. So that's Rachel. Next up, we've got Eric King. He's an Air Force physicist and an officer in the Air Force, I think, also, while being a physicist. He's estranged from his wife, and he's sort of like a boy wonder, kind of a douche, smart guy sort of thing. And he comes into the story because he has some science thing he's made, essentially, that like lets you be able to see like heat, I think, underground. And so it like tips them off that maybe this is where weapons are hiding. And so that's how he sort of shows up. Then you've got Jason Kolchak. He's first lieutenant, and he's kind of a confident, like, America kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's him. That's straight up sums up what he's like when you meet him, and you're like, okay, he's just sort of a, we're defending America and we're doing this kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Then you've got Nick Kay. He's a sergeant. He's questioning whether being in Iraq is a good thing. Recently, they had, before the game, they had like a traffic stop where they killed an unarmed person, but they didn't realize, like, the person wasn't listening, and so they were like, are they a bomber kind of thing, sort of feel. And so he's got a lot of guilt over this of, I didn't want to kill this person, but we ended up in this spot where this happened. And so he's really questioning, like, why are we here? Is this a good thing even, sort of thing. Yep. And then the last kind of playable character we have is Salim Othman. He's an Iraqi lieutenant, and he's trying to give his son a better life. His son, I think, is just ending high school because he just got accepted to a college in England for university. And he seems like he is sort of a reluctant soldier. Like, I don't know that he necessarily would have chose to be a soldier, but his country was under attack, and so he was like, okay, well, I need to defend my country, and so I'm kind of here. And also his wife had left him, so he's been raising his son on his own. So he's kind of got some family dynamics and is sort of in a spot he's really not choosing to be in. I
don't know how you feel, but I think out of all 5 characters, 4 of them fit like pretty generic archetypes, if you will. Salim was the one that I was most interested in, and I wish they would have maybe dove into his background, his upbringing, his perspective a little bit more, because I think that like Rachel, Eric, Jason, Nick each fit like a soldier archetype that I don't want to say wasn't interesting, but Salim was the only character where I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is different than like what you might typically get out of like a army television show or like a cop show or a CIA show, having the enemy interact with like 4 enemies is cool, and I like Salim a lot.
Me too. He was definitely my favorite as well, and like even the moment you meet him, it's a bit different than meeting your other characters, and you're like, ooh, I like you. I want to learn more about you. I want to be with you. I hope you survive. Like, I felt that way pretty early on, versus in some of the previous entries, I've been like, okay, I kind of prefer this character, or maybe the big actor of it. So like this one, Ashley Tisdale, or the previous one was
Will
the...
Holt.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that guy. It was him, and so, you kind of default towards, okay, he's the biggest character, I guess, but...
Yeah, sorry, Will Poulter.
Poulter, there we go, right. I was like, we're the Millers. I was thinking you're getting paid? That's what I thought. But yeah, Salim is cool. I like him, and I agree. I think he brings the most interesting dynamic among the game because of what he is. He doesn't follow those archetypes. So those are your playable characters. You also have a couple side characters you see kind of along the way. You've got a guy named Nathan Merwin. He's a soldier who's an asshole. That basically sums it up. If you can have an asshole dialogue thing, that's him. That's what he's doing kind of while he's around. You've got Joey Gomez, who's kind of he's another soldier who is, I think maybe more like the rookie, so to speak, and more... apprehensive, I guess. Then you've got Clarice Stokes. She is a scientist who works with Eric. She's kind of his number 2 and does science stuff with him. And then lastly, you've got Dar Basri. He's Salim's captain, or like over him in the Iraq military. So he's kind of... and he's a big, like, we'll defend our country to the last man kind of thing. Yep. Like, he's fully committed. Also, weird trivia about him. His voice actor is a guy named Khalid Al-Khalif. Al-Khalif, I think is his last name. Mm-hmm. He was a character on a podcast, or on a TV show called The Mist that I used to do a podcast on. The show ended up getting canceled, not being good. But he showed up in this, so it was a weird Dan connection of sorts.
The Mist. What is The Mist?
It was a TV show that ended up not being good and getting canceled after a season. Okay. So, yeah. But he was in it. But the concept is that there's like a mist that comes to town, and there are like monsters in the mist and that kind of shit. The movie's good. I would say skip the TV show. Okay. But the movie's pretty good. But he was on the TV show, and so it was kind of funny. I was like, I recognize your name, and I looked it up, and I was like, oh, you were on a show I used to do a podcast about. So I thought I recognized you. So kind of funny to come across him again.
I had a moment like that with Chernobyl.
Oh, cool.
I had a moment with that like that. Oh, sorry. I had a moment like that with Chernobyl, with the game, the guy who did It Takes Two, Hazelight.
A Way Out? Is that it?
A Way Out, yeah. So the one of the characters from A Way Out, Joseph Ferris's brother, is also in Chernobyl. So I had a similar moment like that in video games.
Oh, cool.
Not recently, but in the last 2 years for sure.
That's cool. That's awesome. It's fun when those kind of connections show up and you're like, I know you. Why do I know you? And you look and you're like,
where do I know you from?
Yeah, it's funny. That's cool. Okay, those are our characters. Now we'll jump into our recap. We'll talk about the story, what happens in House of Ashes. And the game begins in an unexpected way because it's 2231 BC. It wasn't ready for this. And what you've got going on is there are these two people groups or tribes called the Akkadians and the Gutians, and they're at war with one another. They have this big issue in their area, and you end up playing as a guy named Bethulu, who's an Akkadian, who was about to kill another guy named Kurum, who's a Gutian, as a sacrifice. But right as you're about to kill him, you get called into the king's chambers to go address him, so you go head off. And you get there, and the king is a guy named Naram Sin, who says that we need to make sacrifices to the gods in order to defeat the Gutians in battle. So they've got this kind of intense scene going on, and you also get the vibe that the king is sort of a crazy guy, and I think everyone around him also feels that way, but he's so bloodthirsty that you don't want to kind of oppose him because you don't want to be on the chopping block.
Yep.
So he has you kind of prove that you're ready to spill blood for the gods to be able to beat the Gutians, and he has you kill like a woman. At the same time, Kurum manages to escape from his cell. He does. And then there's a big battle going on between the Akkadians and the Gutians. And then an eclipse happens, and a bunch of monsters are released in this eclipse. They just kill everybody. The monsters have gone around. They've killed everyone. You don't see them at this point, but you hear them. And they kind of sound like the aliens from Alien to me. I don't know if you felt that way.
Yeah, I think that's the vibe I got, and I think I distinctly remember that's the first time that they present the perspective of the monster, that kind of crystallized, almost it looks like you're looking through their eyes, but it looks like you're looking through maybe like a prism or a gem, and the detail is actually pretty low, but deliberately so, and it looks a little bit blurry because their vision from the sound of it is not great, and so I loved it. The way they put it together is like we were inspired by like aliens and vampires, and so it's this like bipedal almost monster that is human-like but much taller, and then has like almost like dog, like the legs of a dog or a werewolf, and it's got two sets of wings too, so it's really and then fangs, like two very distinct long fangs that come down where your front teeth should be. So like a very cool and distinct monster design.
Yeah, totally. And super intimidating. If you saw one, you'd be like, oh shit, I gotta go.
I'm gonna die.
Yeah, if you see one, you kind of know it's over. And like you said, their sight isn't that good. We find out, well, we'll say it now, but we find out later that like they like sound is what attracts them. And then, they can see you right when they're in front of you, but I think if you were like hiding quietly, they might not notice you. But if you make a sound, then they kind of recognize you and can kind of go there.
Exactly. They make some allusion to like, I don't know if they said the word echolocation, but it just seemed like they had a heightened sense of hearing versus sight. Yep.
Yeah, totally. Which they certainly ended up in the perfect habitat for that, for sure. But Bethulu and Kurum end up having to run into each other, and they sort of have a reluctant alliance to make it out. They start making their way through the tombs. Everyone's dead. They kind of hear the monsters, and so they start to head towards the catacombs. They go there. There's a part where they get kind of stuck, and a monster's coming, and they know they have to face it. And they're up against a door that's, I think, not one they feel like they can go through, so it's like, we need to make our stand. And so you have a moment where it's like, okay, are you ready to stand and fight? And you can say yes, or you can choose to betray the other one. And for me, at least, I chose to stand and fight, but then I was betrayed and I got stabbed, and then that guy ran off and the monster came and got me.
Same.
Is that what you happened?
Yeah, same. How do you feel about these intros? Because I know that in the second game, particularly, I remember the intro, how it was like, different characters in a house, family, kind of setting up what happened, or at least there were consequences to what happened in the future game, or it set up some threads that were in the main part of the game. but I just wanted to get through this piece as quickly as possible because there was very little, like, obviously there's a connection between the one of the characters here and then a character that shows up later in the game, but I just felt like I didn't need this intro like I needed it in the second game, or there was less consequence that bled into the main game compared to the second.
Yeah, I agree. The second one definitely did this like intro scene the best, because the first one was the soldiers on the boat. That was okay.
Yep.
But then the house fire stuff, that was pretty cool. Last one, I thought that was a really good scene.
How they're like, yeah, this is your tutorial for the game, and like there are consequences, but like we're gonna give you an out to figure out how to play this game. I think it's cool. I just think that they're, out of the three for the games, this one is probably one of the less effective ones, or one of the ones that I felt connected to the main game the most.
I would agree with that. I think I could see this one even being third place, because Little Hope one was definitely better. But even the soldiers on the ship, you're like, okay, they picked up something haunted that they shouldn't have, and now their ship's a ghost ship. You're like, okay, cool, I get it. Yeah. So yeah, I would agree with that. I think that this one started less good, I guess, like compared to the other ones. So, as you said, though, this essentially functions as your tutorial. You do it. You then meet the curator, who's shown up in the previous games. I don't remember if it exactly happened this way, but you get sort of an awesome intro of the curator. He's like walking down the hall. Oh, Death's playing, and to me it felt like it was like the Dark Pictures being like, yeah, you're playing a Dark Pictures game. Here's the curator. He's cool. We know you like him. We're emphasizing this. He's going to tell you some creepy shit, and then you'll get into your story.
I don't know how you feel about this, but I felt like out of the three games, he felt as though there was the least amount of him compared to the other games.
I think you're right, because I felt like he gave me some hints in the previous ones that made me sort of figure out what's going on a little more. And this one, he didn't really do that as much.
Yeah,
like he was still
like 30% less, but it's noticeable.
Yeah, instead I felt like he made me question my morals through the game. Like, okay, do you really think that this person should do this, or blah blah blah, or how the characters relate versus like, I feel like in the first one, they probably tipped their hand too soon, but it was like, everything's not what it seems, and you're like, okay, because we're on a ghost ship. I felt like they kind of let him play that hand a little more, whereas this one, he didn't really do that. Instead, he was just like, so who does Rachel actually love, or like things like that.
Yeah, and compared to other games, and we're gonna get into it, so I'll be really brief here. But I felt like this is the game out of the three that like threw you in the fastest, and like, I don't want to say spoiled its hand the fastest, because obviously there are twists, and like you think it's one thing and really it's something else, but maybe even it's something else. But I think this one like threw you in the quickest.
I agree. I was surprised how quick you were like in it, and like you said earlier, actually too, I think I played this in maybe 2 sittings also. Like it went pretty fast, because once it was rolling, I was like, okay, I'm in, and so I just kind of ran with it and was like, oh, I finished the game, and like it was cool, but I think it sucked me in a way that like you were just a part of it right away, and it felt intense pretty quick, which was cool.
Yeah, and look, I really love all of Supermassive. Like, I really appreciate that Supermassive is around and does their thing. Like, even, I've said this on previous podcasts we've done, but like Hidden Agenda with the card system, PlayLink was super cool, Until Dawn is dope, and then each of these games, I think the one thing that maybe I need to do is play this with someone else, because I think in all 3 cases, correct me if I'm wrong, both of us played them by ourselves, and I think some of the fun would be playing it with someone else sitting next to you, or multiplayer. I might have played the first one with someone else, but I'd love to do it with someone on the same couch.
Yeah. I've played them all alone. I don't remember if you played them with anyone else either. I don't remember.
I think I might have played the first one with another like friend, but I definitely played the last 2, this one and the last one, alone. I might have played Man of Medan with someone else.
Okay, nice. Yeah,
But
I think this would. Yeah, I think this would be perfect couch, like you said, like just passing the controller back when the character switches or something. Like, I think that would make that really good. Or since I guess all these games have 5 characters, if you wanted to have a character you were, even if you had 5 friends and you just passed it around that way, like, oh, I'm always Eric, you're always Rachel, or whatever. Like, even that would probably be pretty fun as a way to do it. Cool. No, that's great. So that's our intro. Set it up. We're a Dark Pictures game. Now we get into our story itself, which is Eric and Clarice arrive at their camp in Iraq. It's 2003, so the middle of like looking for bombs or whatever. And Eric shows up at this camp, and he's now in charge. He's like the superior officer. And he shows up, and he's taken over this camp. And the camp was previously led by his estranged wife, Rachel. So probably not the best relationship move to come and take over her the place she's commanding.
Hi, honey. Good to see you. I'm taking over. Thanks.
Yeah. Just so you know, I'm your superior officer. Like, yikes. Not an ideal assignment. I'd probably try to get put somewhere else if I was him. Yep. But he shows up, though. He's in charge. He gets greeted by Jason. And then you pick up with Rachel. You find out that Rachel was leading. She also has had this affair with Nick that's secret from everyone else. While you're talking with Nick, you can choose to say something like, okay, well, now that Eric's here, I'll let him know that we're together. Or you can say, sorry, Nick, we're done. Or I think you can maybe say something more in the middle, but I just said we're done. I was like, we can't deal with this right now. Like, now that he's here, we can't keep doing what we're doing, but I'm not gonna like break up. I'm not gonna break up with him right now or something. So that was sort of how I took it. Your camp also includes other people we mentioned: Jason, Merwin, Joey, and Eric explains that he's got Project Kalis that shows there's an underground facility where he thinks nuclear weapons could be hidden. And so he comes up with a plan on how to secure that area and investigate it. So they're going to take their soldiers in, they're going to go look around, and if things go well, they'll find these nuclear weapons, and I think will be big for him. I think his aim is we'll find these nuclear weapons, I'll shoot up the ranks, I'll be really important to the military and look really good.
He's kind of pitched as a wunderkind, like really quickly. They're like, oh, here's the genius with here's the physicist genius with his computer system.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so then he'll like earn his hype, so to speak, almost, and be like, I've done it. I'm the one who found the nuclear weapons or whatever. So you've got that going. We then jump over to Salim to meet him, and it's his son's 18th birthday, and he's got a present for him. So he comes to his house to give us a present to his son. However, his son's not there, and he looks around. You also find out through looking around that his son has been like stealing stuff. So his son's sort of rebellious, it seems. And so Salim is basically like, I hope that I can get him off to the better life, get him to college. This will all work out, and we can kind of move on from here and kind of get him out of his rebellious habits, sort of thing. But then Dar shows up, who is Salim's superior officer, and says the Americans are coming. And you're like, the war's over. Like, you know, Saddam is gone. We don't need to keep fighting. And Dar's like, no, we're soldiers. We're Iraqi. This is our homeland. We're never going to give up. So come with me. And Salim's kind of like, all right, fine. It almost feels like a Clerks, like I'm not even supposed to be here today sort of feel. And so Salim reluctantly goes along to fight the Americans.
And that's when things kind of start to go sour. I have thoughts about how this game plays as a shooter. But I don't know if you want to set the scene about the shepherds before we do that.
Yeah, sure. I'll set our scene real quick. So our team arrives at Eric's site to secure the area. You've got some shepherds hanging around, and the soldiers kind of secure everyone, make sure no one has weapons, whatever. And they're like, "There's not an underground facility. What the hell, dude? Like your stupid Boy Wonder thing didn't work at all." And then this is sort of where combat comes into play, because Dar and his troops show up. They start attacking the Americans, and sort of your firefight ensues.
This game is very much a like Telltale style adventure game if you are listening to this without having heard any of our other episodes on it. And so, because they're soldiers, shooting is actually like a very core mechanic to this one. And I don't know how you felt, but it's exactly like the shooting in Telltale, where you just like point your cursor, hit a button, and then your character kind of takes it from there in a cutscene. But I don't know. I felt like maybe a game with a broader scope or more dev time like could have made that a little bit more interesting than like Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1 that came out many, many years ago. It serves the purpose to move the story forward, but it's like a very, I don't want to say bare bones mechanic, but it basically is, like a TV remote, point and shoot.
Yep, it is. I agree. I felt similarly, and with Telltale's, I remember that being that way too, where it's like there'd be times where I'd die, and it wasn't because of anything I did; it was because the mechanic isn't great,
for sure.
kind of thing. So in this one, you have your shootout where you kind of point and click. In the shootout, Joey gets killed, who is one of your soldiers. Also, different nameless characters, nameless U.S. soldiers and nameless Iraqi soldiers get killed. However, during the firefight, an earthquake happens, and our characters fall down into a cavern below, which this is where it starts our really Dark Pictures-esque game of it.
Hello, now we in-game.
Yeah. Now we're really in there, I would say. We've gone through, we've met our characters, we've done this. And we pick up first underground with Nick, who's alone, and he actually briefly sees a monster in the distance right away, and is like, something's up. He ends up meeting up with Jason, and while he's talking with him, he can share about the monster he saw. Or choose not to. I did share about it, but Jason didn't believe me. He's like, "No, you're just spooked. There's not a monster. Monsters aren't real," basically. And so after that, you end up meeting up with Clarice and Merwin, who's injured. And you talk to them, you're kind of planning what to do, and a monster jumps out and snatches Clarice. And so the three of you are like, "Oh shit." So you just run off from there. And
is she the one that, like, imagine that you're in a poorly lit cave and one person is standing on the periphery, and at one point she's standing there, and then it's almost like she got hooked in the middle, like a stage hook in the middle of her torso, where she just like and then disappears. Is that what happens to Clarice?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's what it felt like to me too. It was just, and you're like, "Oh shit, okay." So now there's some credence. Nick's monster might be real. Is sort of your feel, and so you just drag Merwin away because he's pretty hurt. His I think he has an injury on his chest, so he can't like walk on his own. So you're just kind of pulling him while one of you's like aiming your gun and the other one's pulling him to kind of get out of there ASAP. After that, you pick up with Salim, who is alone, and he's looking for his fellow soldiers. He ends up running into a monster who chases him, but a truck falls from above onto the monster and crushes it. And Salim's kind of like, "Fuck you, I lived," sort of thing, and kind of rejoicing.
But very like in true like monster movie style, like very quickly the creature from underneath the truck like just starts like moving its hand or its like talon. Like, "Oh cool, these things are indestructible. Great."
Yeah, you're like, "Okay, we're not getting out of this alive, are we?" Like that's what it really felt like. And then lastly, from our crew, Eric and Rachel are near each other. They meet up. And they end up realizing they can't go up to get out of the cavern, and instead they have to go deeper into it. So they have some ropes with them, and they rappel further into it. Also, Eric thinks he hears the monsters, but Rachel says she doesn't hear anything. So we've got kind of our couple crews here with various monster interaction and kind of what they think is going on.
All that I remember from, obviously I remember like the major beats, but I think the thing that I very distinctly in my mind remember is this damn generator. This generator that we just keep coming back to, I swear, for like the middle 50% of this game.
Yep. Yeah. That is a big part of that. And that's where we get next of this generator shows up because Eric and Rachel find an old archaeologist camp. And they turn on this generator. And the generator is kind of the bane of our existence for half the game, like you said. It's like, okay, now you have to find it. Or you need to find duct tape. Or you find gas. Or whatever. It's like a thing from the 50s that's just getting held together. And for some reason, you just keep having to use it and keep engaging with it. So it does come up a lot. And for some reason, Eric takes this time to be romantic and say, hey, I know I've been doing career stuff for a year, but do you want to be like husband and wife again for real? And Rachel can say yes, or she can be like, this isn't really the time. We're stuck in a hole. Like, what do you mean?
I'm really interested how you played, because I have a specific way that I played Nick, Eric, and Rachel. And before I tell you the way I did, I would love to know like how you played each character in that love triangle, or if you had ulterior motives and like a Barbie and Ken doll, you're like, I want to put these two together. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
So the way I played it was kind of Rachel being into neither of them. And I think that Eric. So I think Eric kind of showing up and being like, oh, I could, like, salvage my relationship even though I've been gone, like, doing what I want for a while. I was kind of like, no, I'm not interested in you. But on the other side, I broke it off with Nick because I kind of took it as a Rachel needs to just figure herself out. And not that Nick was bad. I think Nick was fine. I think more just that... I think it was more Rachel just doing her thing, maybe less being interested in a relationship, but more just like, cool, I'm going to hook up with you sort of thing. So I kind of took it as Rachel's going to like choose her own path sort of deal. Yeah, so that was sort of how I played it. What about you?
I played Eric like the garbage man that he was. So he was a man that was focused on his career and focused on himself, very self-centered.
Yep.
I played Nick in kind of the I'm in love with Rachel, but I'm also kind of aloof for reasons that are like fully valid. That I need to kind of figure out my own mental health and whatever. And then for Rachel, like very much, I just like all of Eric's advances. I was just like, nah, you're garbage. And then for Nick, I was maybe a little bit more sympathetic and empathetic towards Nick compared to the two. So that's how I played that fun love triangle.
Interesting. Cool. I imagine we had some pretty different experiences with that because, you know, for each of them, I kind of played understanding to each of them. So, like, when Eric is like, oh, Kalis project, blah, 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 I didn't be like, Kalis is stupid and you suck. Like, I didn't go harsh at him. Instead, I was just like, well, I'm sorry that happened. But, like, also, I'm not into you. So, that was
Here's a fun thing. I will give a small peek as to what's ahead. Out of that love triangle, both of us lost someone, but in our cases, we both lost someone different.
Ooh, good. I like this. I feel like we've got a good thing ahead of us then.
Hooking the listeners for later.
yeah. Oh yeah, that's a great hook. That's like a commercial break, and then it's like, oh, what's gonna happen?
And we're coming right back.
Right back. Love it. So also at this archaeologist camp, they find they find out that the lead archaeologist is a guy named Randolph Hodgson. And in it, he has an audio recording where he says, I think we've awoken something wicked. And so it's sort of ominous. And you hear gunfire in the background of the tape. This also sets up a kind of secondary story that's going on alongside the rest of the game, which is you can find his tapes or manuscripts and like stuff like that around the site. So you sort of have this old story you can learn about of when this archaeology team was here 50 years ago, but then were killed by monsters. So that's kind of cool of having this sort of side story to it.
Yeah, and you collect it through collecting these little pages that you find kind of everywhere. And the thing, there's really two things. There are secrets and bearings in these games. And secrets are found when you just like pick something up off the ground. Sometimes there is information that you can find on it, and other times it actually unlocks, in this case, these like extended story bits that if you collect all of them, you can actually watch them in the main menu of the game. But they provide color as to the folks that came before. And then bearings are just like, it was actually a bearing in the previous games, but now it's like a crow. But basically there are like 8 main important threads choice-wise that will determine what happens later in the game. And I'm sure we'll get into that, but I needed to just mention secrets, bearings, and then these pages. I don't want to say I turned off with these pages, but I didn't really care about the characters in them, but I did care, like, broad strokes, what was happening and how that story mirrored the story that was happening here.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't care about the characters in them either. Like, Randolph is whatever, or all of that, but it was more just, okay, they had something bad go on. Is there something that they learned that we could use, or, like, things like that? So that kept me engaged in them. It's like, do they have a secret where it's like, oh, they're really allergic to blah 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 or something like that. It'd be like, oh cool, that would be really helpful to know. So that was, I feel like, your big draw with those for sure. But unfortunately, Eric and Rachel's time together gets paused because Captain Dar shows up and starts shooting at them. Captain
Dar.
Yeah, and that's more or less his MO. He sees you and he'll shoot at you. He has not changed. Even though you're in a cavern, even though there's monsters, he's going to kind of do his thing, which is shoot at you. Yeah. So after this, you've got Jason, Nick, and Merwin on the run from a monster, and eventually there's a part where Merwin says, I'm slowing you guys down. You can't keep dragging me. We're running from these monsters. Like, just leave me here. I'll take them out. I'll defend I'll cover you, sort of thing. And so you have the option to kind of have a no man left behind, or okay, ye right. We'll keep going. So I chose to leave him, and you end up hearing him get killed. My thought was, he's right. He is slowing us down. And he seemed injured enough that I wasn't sure he was going to make it anyway. So I was like, I'll just leave him behind. That makes sense. So what about you? Did you do the same thing?
Yeah, except I think that in this case, I think if I remember correctly, it's like out of the characters, it is Eric that like runs forward and then gets ambushed by Dar. And then you have a shooting match between Jason and Nick. And I think that in this case, Dar ran away after the incident. I think that's what happened there.
Okay, so Merwin gets killed by Dar for you?
Merwin getting killed by Dar? I don't remember, honestly.
Okay. Mine, he got killed off screen by a monster. Like, you heard him scream when a monster got him. But either way, it seems like Merwin dies around here for either of us, so no more Merwin.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, he is a dick, so it's kind of fine. Later, Eric and Rachel keep running away from Dar, who keeps shooting at them, and they end up using a rope to try to cross a chasm. But as they're crossing it, a earthquake happens again, and Rachel gets knocked off the ledge, and she's hanging by a rope. And you have a sequence of events where Eric can try to pull her up or choose to cut the rope. And you end up getting to make this decision, I think 2 or 3 times, where it's like she falls a little more and they're like, are you sure you don't want to cut it? That kind of thing. So what do you do here?
So let me just go back to Merwin for a second. So for Merwin, Nick covered his mouth and suffocates, and because of that, Merwin suffocates. So that's what happened with Merwin for me.
Oh, shit. Okay.
The thing that I talked about happens a little bit later. So pardon me for going into it there. Like I said, the middle, there's like a middle 30% of this game that was like all around, like it was in the same chambers and around the generator. And sometimes I get the order of operations mixed up. In this case, what I was able to do is, we are now talking about Rachel, and how she had helped one of the characters who had been like infected make her way through, right?
No, earlier.
See, it's like the order. It's order. I'm just like, what happens where? I remember all the beats, but I'm getting the order mixed up.
No, yeah, you're totally good. There's a part where Rachel's hanging off a rope before she falls into the blood river. Yep. And Eric can choose to cut it or not.
I chose not to cut it. So
okay.
He was just like holding it, and I think what happens is like the same end result where the rope actually breaks. And what was wild in my mind is one of the premonitions. So from some of the objects, you get premonitions of like, hey, this is a thing that could potentially happen. One of the premonitions is Rachel falls on this giant spike and like gets impaled and dies.
Oh shit.
And so my thought was like, I need to hold on to this rope or else Rachel's going to get impaled and dies. But in this case, that's not where that happens.
Right. No. Okay. That's good. Yeah. For me, I did the same thing. I didn't cut it. I felt like Eric wouldn't, like, even though he's kind of a coward and a piece of shit, I don't think he would cut the rope on the wife he's hoping to win back.
Yep.
So I didn't have him cut it. But Rachel ends up falling into the depths below. You don't know how far it is, so they just think she's dead. Because of this, Nick shows up and tries to help Eric towards the end, but it doesn't work. Also, I think we've entered the point in the game where any of our characters can die at this point. Because I think our group gets run off again, Eric, Jason, and Nick, because Dar shoots at them again. But I think there's a point along the way where Dar could have actually shot and killed one of them. So we've entered a spot now where I think every character can die. And I think every character can die, I would say at least 5 times, if not maybe more like 10. Like, there's a lot of options where characters can get killed along the way after this, which is pretty cool.
Let me tell you, the thing that screwed me in every case in this game was the heartbeat stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it was my TV, because I remember like when Guitar Hero games and when rhythm games were becoming a thing in the HDTV era, that you had to kind of set up your delay because sometimes like your TV had milliseconds of delay that some TVs didn't. And I don't know if it was my TV or me or what, but every single heartbeat I failed in this game.
Oh,
every single one of them.
Oh, man. I started off good and then got bad. It was weird. Like the first couple ones I was doing well and I was like, yeah, I'm handling the heartbeat stuff. And then at the end I kept messing that up and monsters kept chasing me. So
one of my heartbeats had a very fatal consequence that I will share when it happens.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, so now we've got our new group though of Eric, Jason, and Nick, and they return to our generator room that we love. And we find that the generator got sabotaged. And while they're in there, they start to hear Joey's voice. And Jason says we should go find Joey. Nick, though, says, no, Joey's dead. I, held him when he died during the shootout before we fell down here. And Jason doesn't believe him. Again, no, there's not monsters. No, that is Joey. You didn't see what you thought. I think he's got a lot of questioning towards Nick, with Nick's kind of guilt regarding the war, and on the other side, Jason being like the America, soldiers, we do soldier stuff. He's just not a believer. But then they end up getting ambushed by Dar during this conversation, and Nick gets separated from Eric and Jason because a pillar falls and puts them in separate rooms. While they're separated, Nick ends up meeting Salim, and they get trapped by a monster. And Salim says, we can escape if we work together, which felt a lot like the beginning of the game. But Nick agrees, and they work together, and they kill the monster. This is pretty cool. Nick has his like machine gun that he's using, but then Dar, on the other hand, has this like big pole that he uses, or not Dar, Salim has a big pole that he uses, and so it's sort of a like Nick shoots at him as cover, and then Salim comes behind and like shoves the pole through the monster, and it kills it, which is cool.
Fun thing, if you do that 5 times, there's an achievement that you can get. I don't know if you got that achievement, but Salim, if he kills 5 people with that, or 5 monsters with his pole, you get an achievement.
Oh, cool. I didn't get that. I think he killed like 3 or 4 that way for me, but I didn't get 5. That's awesome. Salim's sweet.
Salim's the best character in this game, bar none.
Oh, yeah. He's so sweet. He's awesome. After this, though, you kill your monster, and Nick can hear Eric and Jason coming. And for me, he tells Salim to hide here, and is like, hey, go hide behind those pillars. Like, I don't know if they'll react to you the same way I will, so go duck, basically. Did you do the same thing?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wasn't sure how they would react. Like, I thought Salim was cool. I was good with teaming up with him as Nick, but I wasn't sure if either of them would be irrational. So Salim goes and hides and ends up not following us. We head back to the temple where the generator is, and Eric does an autopsy on the monster. And one thing he does during this is he uses a UV light on the monster, and it actually just catches it on fire, and it dies. Or, well, it's already dead. I guess it disintegrates, turns into ash kind of thing, which was wild, unexpected, and you kind of get this learning of, okay, light's like really, really bad for these monsters. They can't handle it.
Like vampires.
Yes, like vampires. Exactly. Also, actually, this is a good call out now. I would say that your monsters can have lots of different names through this as we go, and we might use some of them along the way, but I have generically used monsters a lot in my notes just to keep it that way, but we learn more about our monsters, that they're not just monsters themselves.
Yeah, I in my notes like refer to them as vampires because that's what I know. Salim like basically calls them vampires throughout, but I think some of the other characters may also refer to them as vampires. Salim does for sure, though. Yeah,
Salim definitely says that. I think he's right, too.
Because I think his son, like the thing that you just get a glimpse of is that his son is really interested in like mythology and like, you know, history, and so maybe Salim knows more than the average human being would know about like mythos or like mythical creatures rather.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you're right. He seems most on it for sure. Also, while Eric is doing the autopsy, Jason and Nick go to fortify the area. They make one decision that's pretty important here, which is they add explosives with a tripwire to the hallway. And in this, you can choose to add it to the center of the room or out on the sides. And it's important
center.
Really? Okay, I went outsides.
Yeah. Okay.
But either way, it's important to remember what you do, because that will come up again, for sure. Then after this, after they set their explosives, they get attacked by Zombie Joey, who, it is Joey from before, like it looks like him, he's walking around, but he's pale, I guess like a vampire like you described, but he's clearly like dead looking. Like it's not
the horns at this point.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. He has some horns going. And they kind of try to talk to him, but then Eric uses the UV light on him and Joey falls into a pit below.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah, which was great. And when he falls to the pit below, the group realizes, oh shit, there are a lot of monsters down there. Like, this is bad. We're seriously outnumbered, and they are clearly good at living here and hunting and all of that. Like, we're not only outnumbered, but they're like better than us too. From here, we pick up with Rachel, who's actually alive, despite her fall, and she's in a pit of blood. And to me, this reminded me, I don't know if you remember this, but in Tomb Raider, the reboot game, there's like just a blood river of like gore that you have to go through. It was super gross. And this really reminded me of that.
And to tie it all together into the shows I do and you and you are going to appear on Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast. I think like either the week of this comes out or the week after. And we are watching the first Angelina Jolie Lara Croft movie. So just tying it all together. There's one person that's listening who is just cringing and saying, Jacob's always got to talk about his own stuff.
No, I thought it was funny. I was like, this reminds me of this. And I was like, well, we're talking about Tomb Raider, but it did remind me of this. So I felt like it had to be acknowledged. It was funny that it does tie together, though. That's great. Yeah. Oh, it's super gross looking, though. She's in a gross, like, watery pit full of blood. It's nasty. And she has to kind of go through this gross water. And she ends up running away from a monster, and she ends up getting helped out by Clarice along the way, who, like, I think pushes like a support beam over that either falls on the monster or blocks the monster. Either way, they're able to escape. And as Rachel and Clarice are walking and talking, Rachel realizes that Clarice is infected, but can kind of choose to like banish Clarice and be like, you're sick. Or she can kind of choose to work with her still. And Clarice doesn't look well. She's like looking pale. Yep. She doesn't look great. From here, you sort of get lots of crews of people reuniting. So you have Dar and Salim find each other. And Dar, as Dar does, wants to keep attacking the Americans. I've seen them. Let's do my favorite thing. Let's set an ambush. And Salim is like, could we just leave instead? There are monsters down here. The Americans are the least of our problems, basically.
Yep.
But Dar, of course, wins out. So Dar and Salim ambush Eric, Jason, and Nick. You have a firefight here. In this, I think your characters can also get killed. This is another opportunity for that, where if you don't do your kind of gunplay and dodging properly, you could have people die here, I think.
Yeah, the way that I think about it is like the further you get into the game, the easier it is for your characters to die. You may get multiple chances like at the midpoint of the game to keep your character from dying, but right near the end, like one bad button press could mean death for your characters.
Yep.
In this case, like Dar was the one who's kind of leading the firefight between Eric, Jason, and Nick. I had no casualties there, and then after that, my Rachel decided not to leave Clarice behind, and so everyone kind of came together at that stage. At least the Americans all came together at that stage.
Yep. I had the same thing. Rachel doesn't leave Clarice behind. There's a part where you like swing across ropes together, and you can choose to be like, I'm not giving you the rope, you sick. But
I did the same.
Yeah, I did the same. I gave it to her. However, shortly after a reunion, the group is like, Rachel's infected. She's going to become a monster. And Jason ends up shooting her for that in mind. Is he puts her down of, she's going to come back as one of them. We've got to end this now. And I don't think she like... I don't remember if there was a lot of resistance from her. I think she didn't... Not that she wanted to get shot, but I don't think she was like, you can't let them shoot me, if I'm remembering right. But
she gets shot right between the eyes, like... And
yep.
She gone.
Yeah, she gone. So you had the same thing happen. She got killed as well for you. Okay, so now our crew goes back to the generator room for one last time. And they've got to make a stand because the monsters are coming. We've made a lot of noise in all of these firefights. And the monsters attack the temple as the generator fails. This is bad because the generator provides light. These guys can't do light, so our crew's on the run. And they run into a nearby room, and in that room, they end up finding Dar and Salim there. And you can choose either to, hey, we got to work together, guys. I know you keep shooting at us, but they're monsters. We have a bigger fish to fry. Or you can say to tie them up. I said we should fight. What did you do there?
I also said, like, let's fight. And I recognize this, like, there's a similar moment in the previous game that everyone kind of has to fight or escape. And it does, like, a really cool, like, it is such an action-packed, like, 5-minute sequence where you flip perspectives between characters multiple times. I think for me, I think Rachel gets, like, infected here for me.
Yep, I had the same thing happen here.
So Dar gets killed, Rachel gets infected.
Yeah, Dar's killed, Rachel's infected, and they're like pouring in, like you said, it's that action sequence. It's popping around character to character, like it's wild. And it also, you have a possessed character from before.
Yeah.
Mine was Bethulu.
Same.
And I think the game alludes to them as the Ancient One, but it's the guy from the beginning of the game. They're possessed by the vampire, and they almost represent almost like a boss vampire, so to speak, among the others. And so you kind of go up against him. You have a fight with him along the way. When this scene ended, Rachel gets infected here, but I thought when my scene ended, I was like, Eric's dead, Rachel's dead, Nick's dead. That's what I thought when it ended. They weren't dead, but when I ended the scene, I was like, holy shit, my crew just got slaughtered. And it really felt like that, which I thought was pretty cool.
Because there was some points where, like, your character, I know for sure, Eric, like, Bethulu grabs him, like, either by the eyes or by, like, the ears, like, by his head, and is starting to, like, pull him away. And I know that there was times where I forget if it was Nick saving Nick saving Eric or Eric saving Nick, but there was a time where Bethulu had both of them, and, like, one helped the other and Bethulu just grabbed the other. So I was very much like, oh, did I lose this fight? But I think that we both did this fight in the ideal way. Like, there couldn't have been a better outcome for both of us.
Yeah, I think you're right. In that, and like you said, within the fight, there's all these options of, like, do you help them or do you just leave? It was pretty wild. I thought that scene was really cool. I thought they did a good job. After this, though, we pick up with Salim and Jason, who have to team up to make their way through the catacombs after the attack. And they, like us, they think that they're the only ones left. So they're like, all right, we got to kind of wrap this up. And Salim and Jason head deeper into the caves because they're like, okay, well, we're going to destroy the monster's nest on the way here. Like, let's just end this. I think they're also sort of doubting, can we make it out alive or not? If we can't, we should at least make sure this doesn't ruin other people in the future, basically.
They had a great, like, I'm not a Jason fan, and, like, I think that's the intention, is he's supposed to be, like, classic jarhead, oorah, military man. And I think they really succeeded in making him feel more human through Salim.
I agree. I don't know if you got this conversation. So when they're walking and talking together, there's a little bit at first where it's sort of they're antagonistic towards each other, or like, oh, I don't want to talk, it's just a job to do, like that kind of shit. But then they start to be a little more open and honest with each other. And there was a part where Jason, for me, says he's got like a shirt or a hat that's like, 9/11, never forget, or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's talking to Salim, and he's like, this stuff's all bullshit. Like, I was high out of my skull on 9/11. I didn't find out it happened until a week later. And I was like, whoa. I thought that was cool when he was honest about that, because suddenly they have like a different bond with each other that, okay, he's not this oorah douchebag that he's been perceived up until this point as. He's like only been that before this, and it's, you like basically we're like struggling a lot before this, and then you just chose to make this your identity and like join the military and became that guy.
Yeah. This to me, like I said, Salim is like my favorite character by far. And he managed to humanize two characters that were pretty generic through the war, but also through like that story of the woman that was killed by accident.
Yep. Yeah, that too, because Jason also opens up to him about that, right? Of the woman who was killed by accident. They told her to stop, and what you find out is that she had headphones on. She didn't hear anyone, but she like tried to go through the checkpoint without like giving her bags or whatever, and so they shot her. And he's like, Jason even recognizing this is fucked up. Like, she shouldn't have gotten shot. She didn't deserve that. That was wrong.
The guy who'd killed Clarice not 30 minutes ago, talks about how screwed it different situations. But like, I just felt like he just had no. I thought he was someone who didn't really think about the consequences of his actions extensively, but I think that it maybe weighed on him more heavily than I thought it did.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like maybe he's just been such a, like, I won't think about things. I'm just going to do my soldier shit. I'm going to just ooh-rah through all my situations. And then finally, when he's in a spot talking with Salim, and Salim's, asking him human questions, and it makes him think, and he's like, oh, yeah, some of this stuff isn't right. And you're not bad just because you're here. And maybe we could be friends, or at least work together, sort of thing. Like, and it's cool. I thought that was really great. And I think Salim was the perfect character to be able to pull that off too, like we've talked about before this. Because you could have maybe these interactions happen and it fall flat, but instead it really works. And I think a lot of that is due to Salim's character and his lines and the voice actor and all of that stuff. Like, they really landed that super well to be able to pull this. Notch. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah. Salim and Jason going on their kind of crew adventure to take out these nests. And they leave some directions on the ground in case they're survived. Like, hey, go this way. Here's an arrow kind of thing. We then pick up with Rachel, Eric, and Nick, who regroup. They're all alive, actually. We know for both of us, Rachel's infected. For some reason, both of these guys think it's time to say, are you sure you want to be in a relationship or not? Which,
yes, she is on her deathbed, or she is clearly infected. Not a good place.
Right.
And we're going to talk about this love triangle now. We're going to put all our cards on the table now.
Yeah. What'd you do?
I leaned in the favor of, because it's something that like doesn't really give you from my memory like a very like distinct ending where she like is forced to pick someone, but I definitely like leaned more towards like Nick, because I think previously, like, I don't know if this wasn't an option to do, but like Nick shares that he is in a relationship with Rachel. In this, I think I was very like cold. I was very cold towards Eric, and like I was more about like Nick than Eric. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think it wasn't like it wasn't a binary where you're like, you must pick Eric or Nick, but you kind of lean into one direction or the other.
Yeah, I think you're right, where you can choose to lean either way, where it's like, I think they're almost like, okay, so who do you like? Or something like that, and you're kind of like, well, I would, sorry, Eric, it's over, or, sorry, Nick, it's over, like, my husband's here, we're done, sort of thing.
If forced to choose, I picked the lesser of two evils, which is Nick.
Yeah. For me, I told them to both get lost. I was like, you guys are...
nice.
Yeah, you guys are stupid, and I'm not interested in either of you. This is over, sort of thing. And also, come on, guys, timing. Like, you've been fighting monsters, like... Come on, dudes. Like,
We're really going to do this now?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's what it felt like. It was like, we could have this conversation on the surface. Like, let's do it then. But right now it's not the time. But so I shut them both down. After this, we pick up again with Salim and Jason, and they find a spaceship at like the bottom.
Hey, surprise, they're aliens.
Yeah. Yeah. So, aliens / vampires. Pretty wild stuff. And there's cocoons everywhere. I mean, it's crazy. They're like pyramid-sized mountains of cocoons. Like, they've been capturing people and turning them into monsters for a long time. Pretty wild stuff. And you're like, oh shit, like this is way bigger than we even anticipated.
Yeah.
'Cause really, probably before this, we've only seen or fought, I don't know, 5 to 10 monsters, probably, like really low compared to the heap that's here. Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. Rachel, Eric, and Nick show up and join Jason and Salim here. And they're trying to kind of game plan what to do. All right, we've got to be smart about this, because although there's the cocoons of all of the dormant aliens / vampires, there are also a few that are kind of alive and walking around. They're not like patrolling, but they're there, and if you got their attention, you could get attacked, sort of thing. While they're making the plan, Rachel is very infected. She's looking even worse, and you have several options what to do here. I suspect our games differ a bit from this point on. And in mine, Rachel's super sick and recognizes I'm a liability here. I can't be a part of this mission. You can't be worrying about me. What if I, get in the way or blah, blah, blah. So she has Jason kill her for me and says, shoot me, put me down like you did Clarice. This will take care of this. And Jason kind of reluctantly does this while Eric and Nick are both sad nearby. So
interesting.
Rachel, I had her get put down.
Okay, so here's where our games differ. I think our games differ in two major ways. So Rachel is dead in your game.
Yep.
I let Rachel ride it out. So Rachel was clearly clutching her torso, and she's like, "Oh, I feel like crap." But I had known previously, I forget which character, but one of the characters has a creature kind of in their mouth, it looks like. So I immediately thought about Alien and said, maybe this is actually not something that turns them. Maybe there's something else going on. So I'm just gonna let her ride it out, and if she turns, then we'll shoot her then. So what ends up happening is she is curled over. She is basically on her deathbed, and then very quickly, I forget what character, I think ends up waving the UV wand near her, and doesn't make her burn or anything. But what happens then is she keels over, she throws up, and when she throws up, a huge foot-long 10-pound parasite comes out of her mouth. It's disgusting.
It's so gross.
Someone who is misophonic, if you're someone who does not have a strong gut, do not watch it. But she throws up a parasite, and that's when this really starts to unravel of we'll talk about the alien thing in a second, but parasites are actually part of this.
That's so gross.
Yeah, and she throws up, and it's this big creature, and there's just black liquid that's coming out of her mouth at the same time. But she survives, and this creature comes out of her, and then your group very quickly runs after this, into the next room, runs after this parasite to find it and just smush it. But this thing is a couple pounds and a foot long.
Oh, that's so gross. That's so
disgusting.
nasty.
So Rachel survives because of that.
No, that's good that she survives. I would rather have an alive Rachel, but I made the call to have her get put down. So Rachel's dead for me. Rachel's alive for you after barfing a gross parasite. Ugh, yep. Gross. I'm glad I didn't see that. I don't know that I'd want to see that. That's nasty. Okay, so now our remaining crew, or all full crew for Jacob, they kind of come up with their plan of attack on the cocoons. And Nick volunteers to set the explosives on the cocoon pile. And there's kind of two big piles. And he sets one. And then he has another one he could go for. But there are kind of aliens kind of going around, walking around. And as Eric and Salim, you're watching and seeing what's happening, and you can direct him. You should do it or you shouldn't. For me, I called him back here and said, there's not a way that you're going to be able to get there. There are too many roaming monsters. You got to just come back. One explosion will be enough. What did you do here?
And this is where our stories diverge again. Where the choice is the left, right, proceed or retreat, and I told him proceed, and that is probably the reason why my Nick died. So he goes deeper in, and then like your characters are like looking using the using binoculars, and I think that you could actually like, I think there's a time where you can choose left versus right, like pathwise. And when you're using your binoculars, you can see like certain landmarks, but nothing clued in for me to say like he needs to go left versus right. I think I sent him down the wrong path, and then told him to proceed through. So he ends up setting like 3 pieces of explosives, and on the third, he gets essentially surrounded by like, no joke, like 6 vampires, and there's a heartbeat.
Shit.
There's a heartbeat check, and like I said, I failed every single one of them. So when I did that, you know, and he gets grabbed by one vampire, and then 3 or 4 jump on top of him and literally disembowel him. Like,
wow.
Just start pulling out his internal organs, and you just see him like viciously, like you're like, there's his liver, there's his intestines, just like coming out, being thrown away, and then you just see his eyes like fade to white.
Oh, gross. That's super gross.
I got the gross stuff.
Yeah, for real, you did. Okay, so Nick he gets killed for you, and also in this, we start setting the bombs off to blow them up. Mine set it up prematurely with Nick back. Yours, I think, starts setting it off because Nick's dead. In this, too, there's a part where Salim gets separated from the group, but Jason goes back for him, and he manages to team up with Salim. He gets him. They continue on. Finally, Eric, Jason, Nick, and Salim head for an elevator to get up after the bombs have exploded. For you would have, of course, Rachel instead of Nick. But our 4 make it to the top, and you have you make it to the surface. You're up, you're safe, the sun's out, but then an eclipse happens. So the aliens start pouring up, and you have to fight the monsters off for 6 minutes. That's how long the eclipse happens, and there's a ton of QTEs here. I think each character could die in this. It certainly seems that way. And I think you go through 2 rounds. Each character, you play as Salim. You fight, you do your QTEs and fight your monster. Then you go to the next character and you make your way around the group. Then you're back at Salim and you do a second round. It's intense. After failing at QTEs in the last game, I was certainly concerned that I would lose them here, but I made it, and all of my characters survive this fight. The sun comes back out after the eclipse is over, and the survivors get picked up by air support. Is that how this went for you, more or less?
Yeah, 100%. There were times where like I missed a button press, and I think you get like, maybe for each character you get 1. I might have missed like 1 button press, but I think I did pretty well, all things considered, and all 4 of my remaining characters also survived. And so the way it ends is like the characters you have. So in my case, Eric, Rachel, Jason, Salim. In your case, Eric, Jason, Nick, Salim, kind of get on a helicopter, and a lot of them just point at Salim and say like, he's a PW. And I think in my case, Jason was the one who just kind of waved him off and said like, nah, he's one of ours. Like, don't worry. Like, please don't do anything. And he's like, I need to get back to my boy. And I'm like, dude, you're getting a U.S. Army helicopter. You're never leaving.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's where that goes. For sure. Well, we'll hop there. So each of us had 4 survivors. I've got quite a few responses from people online about who survived for them, so we can kind of go through those real quick. First, we got Rebecca on Twitter said, finally finished my first playthrough last night, and everyone survived. Very surprised and pleased with this outcome because I've never managed to save all the characters on the first run of a Supermassive horror game before, and I didn't think I'd be starting with the Soldier game. Totally. That's awesome. Good job saving all 5. And then Chris on Twitter wrote in and said Eric, Jason, Nick, and Salim survived, so he had the same one as I did.
Carbonated Love on Reddit said, only Salim and Jason were alive at the end of my playthrough, and Long Jump on Reddit said, at the end of my first playthrough, everyone lived except Eric, who was shot by Salim. Interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. That's something that's been fun. Some people write in how their characters died along the way. Professor Suck on Reddit said that Salim, Jason, and Nick survived. So 3 survivors for them. And then Taliesin Merlin on Reddit wrote, everyone but Nick was alive at the end. Nick died blowing up the motherlode because the team couldn't get to him in time while being choked. So a different version, I think, of how yours went down.
Yeah, for sure. I am on XNOM on Reddit. Everyone lived in my playthrough except Eric, who got bitten and killed by Clarice. Interesting. Okay. And then Hayden on Reddit. It's a little long, but they said Jason, Salim, and Rachel were alive at the end of mine. Although Rachel was cocooned, she still lived. Eric died because me and my friend didn't want to cut the rope, and he died. Nick died because we didn't find Joey's medical pack, and we didn't make it back in time. Or we didn't make it in time. I'm pretty sure one more person would have died if my controller wasn't messing up. I wanted to save Clarice all the way because I was under the impression I could save everyone, so she would have killed someone else during the assault. Guess I got lucky.
All right. Big One Ron on Reddit said, 3 people lived for me, Jason, Salim, and Nick. Eric died after I didn't cut the rope, and Rachel died after my friend immolated her with the white phosphorus grenade.
Bringing us back to Spec Ops: The Line. That's all I thought of during that.
Yeah. And then Nello Angelo on Reddit said, I managed to keep everyone alive at the end of the game with Rachel throwing up the parasite because Eric used the UV light, like you. So she was with the others till the end. I think last up we got Vengeful Kenny on Reddit who said, Jason, Salim, and Rachel survived. Eric fell to his death, and Nick sacrificed himself, blowing up the motherlode. What I think is cool about hearing these different people's experiences here is they had way different people live and die than we did, and die in different ways. Some of the ways people died I didn't realize because my path didn't go down that way, so kind of cool to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I want to just bring up quickly that we hadn't talked about, but did you get a flashback sequence between Rachel and Eric?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, set that up. Yeah, good call. I forgot to put that in here.
So in the previous game, there was a diner that was really important to the anthology, and in this flashback, it is Eric. Sorry, it is Eric and Rachel who had just gotten married. They've got the cans on the back of their car, and they go to what seems to me like the diner from the second game. It is very quick. It's pretty quick, but that's the flashback that establishes Eric is like an amputee that maybe had his foot amputated or a bottom part of his leg amputated, and it wasn't from war, which we thought it was. It was actually from a car accident that happened immediately after they were in that diner from Little Hope. And the thing that Ashley Tisdale's character says is she goes, yeah, this really strange person inside the diner said that this is the best my life is going to be. So almost like a premonition of, hey, we're about to have something that's going to change our lives forever. And I appreciate that it looks like they're setting up like a continuity between all these games.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I thought that was cool too. So cool. The game finally ends. We've got 2 doctors who are in hazmat suits, and they go into this giant tent that has our survivors in it. And we find out that they're being held, and that the government is essentially covering up what happened. None of our people are ever getting out of where they are, and they're going to act like the monsters, aliens were never there. So kind of a downer of an ending. We made it out alive, but then we're kind of screwed anyway. We're all captured. Yeah. So cool. Okay, that's the game itself. We'll do a couple kind of general thoughts we might have on the game to wrap ourselves up here. So that we haven't talked about. Really, I guess the only thing we haven't talked about that I'd want to highlight is the next Dark Pictures game is called The Devil in Me. And it's going to serve as a finale to Season 1 of the Dark Pictures Anthology. So kind of interesting that they're breaking it into seasons, that it's going to wrap up, at least for a little while. But Season 1 ending implies the start of a Season 2 someday. So I'm curious where that will be. Also, The Devil in Me sort of looked like Saw in a way. So I kind of wonder how gross it will be, and I hope I'm not too grossed out.
I don't know about you, but out of the 4 games, so the 3 that are out and the 4th that just got announced, I am the most excited about The Devil in Me, just because it looks like some sort of like noir serial killer game where each of these games seem to have some kind of supernatural element to them. This one just seems to be like a serial killer 7 kind of game, or even it's in like the mold of games like Hidden Agenda or the game by Quantic Dream, Heavy Rain. Like it seemed like it was in the mold of those games. So I was, despite Quantic Dream's leadership being terrible, I really liked that game.
Yeah. No, totally. I'm definitely really intrigued. I'm a little worried about people getting tortured because I don't want to get too grossed out. But I am excited for it. I think it'll be really cool, and I'm excited to see how they wrap up season 1. Like you mentioned a minute ago, I'm assuming they must all connect in some manner, and maybe that's why it's separated into seasons. Season 1 is this one connecting point for these 4 games, and season 2 will have a different one for those 4 games.
My thought is like they're probably going to take a year off, because I think initially they were going to do one of these games every 6 months and do 8 of them. 5 of them were in production when they first started, but I think like many studios that develop either episodic games or like iterative like semi-sequels, I think that they're just going to take a year and maybe work on the engine, work on the systems, and then come out with 4 more. I really hope that they do, because I think it's this really fun, like, yearly tradition of, like, cool, I'm going to pop into this horror story created by, like, Supermassive, a obviously very talented team. And so I hope that it's really just, like, season 1, they take a year off, and then they bring the fire again.
Yep, that's what I'm hoping for as well. Big fan. This one really changed a lot for me. I thought the other ones were cool. This one has me pretty stoked. I'm like, okay, I think they've got it really figured out. They might have this down. So, yeah, that's really what I have on this. I'm excited for the future. I don't know if you had other things about House of Ashes you wanted to talk about.
I loved Salim as a character. I think I could make a case for both Little Hope and for this game to be my favorite. I liked like the mythological, or rather like the time jumpy stuff in Little Hope a little more than I like the monster stuff in this one. But I think they were like incredibly solid games. I want to know where the universes connect. I want to see what's coming next. And we didn't even like talk about like what these creatures are. They are aliens that were infected by a parasite, that their spaceship crashed to Earth and then like was underground in Iraq. They hibernated for like tons of time. They had this fluid that they created that could preserve human beings. I don't know if you remember in the game, there was this like essentially man who was sitting on the floor, and like 2/3 of his body had completely decomposed down to skeleton, but this fluid preserved like part of his face and he was partly alive. So like I loved like the monster, and the like you thought it was vampires, but then actually hey, it was aliens. Hey, but actually they're parasites like Venom, who like are symbiotes that like attach themselves to these creatures. And there's even, if you look into it a little bit more, these parasites get bigger and bigger, and they feed off of adrenaline in people's blood. So that's why when they create these sounds, it actually pumps more adrenaline into the blood of their victims. And like I don't know if they capture more energy or the blood is more appetizing to them. But as they, that's one piece. But as they grow, they like embed themselves in the skulls of their victims, and that's when like the horns come out and the fangs come out. And I just love when like devs like get super into their bullshit and like are super specific about their creatures and what they do and where they're from. So maybe I've just convinced myself that I like this game more than Little Hope. They're both very good. So I think if you're coming away from this and you're like, hey, I'm interested, like, do you like monsters, or do you like more like psychological horror, I guess? That will tell me which one of these 2 games you start with, because they're all their own isolated stories. I might say just start with Little Hope because of how like there's a small payoff with House of Ashes if you play Little Hope first. I think Man of Medan is kind of, I don't want to say forgettable, but like play Man of Medan if you're really dying after playing the second 2 games.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could skip Man of Medan, or like if you go down this kind of trail of, okay, I'm liking the Dark Picture things, then sure, you could pick it up. But yeah, I agree. No, that's good. So, okay. I would say that that's sort of wrapped our thoughts on this. And a little listener feedback, we'll do that. So, first up, we've got Vengeful Kenny on Reddit, who said, I thought it was a fantastic story, exactly what I wanted to happen, and then some. House of Ashes reignited my love for the franchise, and I've been replaying the other game since then. That's great. And then Big One Ron on Reddit said, I thought it was great. I loved Jason and Salim's relationship. Their character development was great. Honestly, it seemed like it was only meant to be those three that made the trio through the last 40 minutes. I think that they had Nick alive as their third one. They are three seriously badasses. Having a real threat was really refreshing as well. I like the alien twist at the end. Serious alien / Prometheus / H.R. Geiger vibes. There was a lot more action, which I liked. Overall, this is the strongest installment of the Dark Pictures, a promising indication that Supermassive games have finally gotten it down. I hope they continue the trend of making each game better than the last. Definitely their best game since Until Dawn.
Nilo Angelo on Reddit says, I really love House of Ashes. The story was interesting. The characters were great, which made me connect to them and wanting to keep them alive. As I haven't played the other Dark Pictures games, I can't say much, but from the gameplays I've seen of the others, House of Ashes was the one that interested me the most when I watched the gameplay and made me buy it. But the first reason is that House of Ashes had Jason, and I really liked Jason as soon as I saw him, lol. XNum on Reddit says, I loved it. I thought the plot was interesting and some of the characters were great. Salim and Jason are easily the best characters in the series, and I love them. Hated Rachel. Eric was just there. Nick disappointed me when he said Salim was not one of them, even though Salim saved them 30 seconds earlier. Hated that boring and cliche love triangle that I'm so glad I didn't get to experience fully since Eric died. It's not only my favorite Dark Pictures anthology game, but it's also my favorite Supermassive game. Personally thought Until Dawn was extremely overrated. We're going to have words. Until Dawn's very good. But I don't know if you want to jump in and talk about Carbonated Love.
Yeah, I'll keep it going. Carbonated Love on Reddit said, overall, I thought it was really good. The best of the anthology so far. I would rank them House of Ashes, Man of Medan, and Little Hope in last. Can't wait to...
Medan.
Yeah, must have liked the ghost ship. Must have appealed. Yeah. Can't wait to play the end of Season 1 finale in October next year. Then Professor Suck on Reddit said, overall, really, such a good username. I always laugh when I read it. Overall, enjoyed it. The pacing, I thought, was a little whack at times as it seemed to really slow down between the action bits. Beginning probably could have been better if Salim's bit was in the curator's cut and the American side on the theatrical cut, just so it could pick the pace up a little quicker. And towards the end, the kind of plot armor hell. Outside, the creatures were really well done. I definitely liked how the result of the prologue had an actual impact on the main story. Oh, their thoughts keeps going, sorry. In terms of story, though, I honestly like the other two more, despite that Little Hope not really sticking the landing, mostly due to pacing. The character development in House of Ashes are better than the other two, which gives it leverage. I still need to find all the hidden clues and put together the backstory together to give a full assessment. So far, Man of Medan takes the cake for that one. I liked how they connected each relic to parts of the comic. However, I did like the journal bits in House of Ashes. That was a first for the series and really well done. So, someone who came on the other side of this one being not their least favorite of those.
Yeah,
so, is interesting to hear. Yeah, kind of surprised to hear that.
Long Jump on Reddit said, out of the 3 anthology games, I definitely ranked this first because I felt the characters were better and the real monsters actually felt refreshing. The choices feel varied enough for relationship differences to matter, but the story is linear and enough to make it feel like your playthrough can feel canon no matter what you do. Jason's arc in particular is my favorite. I liked how his relationship with Salim mirrored the one of Balathu and Kurum in the prologue. Being able to betray or fight together with the enemy in both scenarios allows you to tell a story of putting aside differences or letting them get in the way.
Cool. Last up, we've got Talisman. Merlin on Reddit said, this was my top game so far. I'm a nerd for lore and games, so that helps. I liked most of the characters a lot. Jason and Salim, Rachel, Nick, and Eric in that order. I thought that this had the best parallel story with the expedition. Slowly hearing what happened to the 1947 group was a highlight, since it had Call of Cthulhu-like elements, an explorer in over his head, a financier, ulterior motives, a failed attempt to blow it up, bizarre colossal architecture below. These games intrigued me because of the varying paths. 2 endings or 20 endings are both fine, but the way they occur with different characters, the way the conversations and decision points can unfold differently really intrigues me. It's really hard to negotiate that moment where Jason and or Eric find Salim and Nick. In one playthrough, I told Salim to hide, and then Jason told that Salim was there. My intent was to play it cool so that no one fired one another, but Nick played it deceitfully, and both Salim and Jason escalated the engagement until Salim fired at Jason and ran away. Yes, making decisions based on limited information, but it's a reminder that it can be easy to misread characters or the situation when the options are limited.
We
interesting.
barely touched on the 1947 stuff, so I love this game because it's like an onion and has layers that you can peel away if you choose to. But all in all, I think there's enough there that you can either engage with it on a very high level, and if you want to go deeper, you can.
Yeah, it seems like, based on going through Reddit, it seems like you can do quite a few playthroughs of this, and it could be pretty engaging, or do different cuts where you play as different characters in different scenes and stuff. It seems pretty cool, kind of the options you have. But that's House of Ashes. I wanted to just throw it out to you. Again, let people know where you are to go check your stuff out. Thank you again for coming on also. I'm really glad we got to do this.
No, so am I, and I'm excited for us to close this out with season 1. Of course, if I'm invited to talk about the final.
Definitely.
Series.
Definitely. Always invited, for sure.
We have a date next October, I guess. You can find me on Twitter at Jacob McCourt, JACOBMCCOURT. I host 3 shows, Left Behind Game Club. It is an informative, positive, and comedic video game book club podcast that I host with my 2 friends, Mike and Mo. I host another show called Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast. It's seasonal. We are running season 3 right now, and Dan is going to be on the show. Does this come out this week or next week?
I think it'll be next week, so I think it'll be a day or 2 after.
Okay, yeah. So if you're a fan of Dan and you're okay with hearing my voice, and you love Travis Colnut and Katie Lesperance, who have been on this show a lot, check the Cutscenes feed, because there should be a show about Lara Croft, the Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider movie, that Dan will be on. So streams are crossing again. Finally, yes. I host the occasional video game trivia. You can find that on YouTube at Jacob McCourt or youtube.com/Jacob McCourt. Thanks so much for having me on today, and I look forward to doing this one more time with you next year.
Oh yeah, me too. Really look forward to it. Yeah. And if you want to check out the previous Dark Picture episodes or other ones we do, go to the website, GreatestStoryEverPlayed.com. That has all our episodes, or find us wherever you get podcasts. I'm on Twitter at StoryEverPod. Hit me up, talk about Dark Pictures. I'd love to keep talking House of Ashes. And yeah, if you want to rate and review us online on iTunes or wherever, that would be really helpful. Just getting to share these games with more people. I think that's something that's really special with games, is getting to share them with people, like sharing Dark Pictures with listeners, with their comments, and with Jacob here. It's really enjoyable. So yeah, that's the episode, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.